and then you find a new weak point because we're mentally ill and we have to fixate on something.
Yeah, buddy. Lightweight, baby!
What's up, guys? I'm Josh and I Lift Things, and I'm here to talk about specificity training, maintenance volume, and bringing up lagging body parts. So, disclaimer, if you haven't been training properly, and by that I mean actually tracking your workouts, tracking your nutrition, and everything else for at least 2 years, this advice probably doesn't apply to you. That doesn't mean you should quit watching, and you should really watch to the end for definitely not selfish reasons on my end. But in all reality, if you are a beginner, every body part for you is lagging. It sucks to say, but that's just how it is. Everything's a weak spot. There possibly or probably some exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, if you don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4 standard, and by that I mean you can overhead press 1 plate, bench 2 plates, squat 3 plates, and deadlift 4 plates, you should probably just spend more time in the gym and underneath a barbell than trying to bring up quote-unquote lagging body parts. But for all you giga chads out there whose body is made up of fucking prime grade A beef, then a specificity training block could be just the thing that you need. Also, quick aside, this video will be paired to go along with my golden ratio how to train for aesthetics video. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you go watch it before you finish this one. Now, first off, let me explain what specificity training even is. It's really just a fancy term for spending a designated amount of time to focus on bringing up a specific body part or skill or movement. It would typically be a form of block training, which essentially means is you just dedicate a certain amount of time to getting that thing done. That block or a specific time frame could be a week, a month, a few months, or whatever else. Let's imagine a hypothetical gym bro. He's been lifting for a few years and he looks great. His shoulders happen to be his genetic strong point. It requires very little volume for them to grow for him. His chest, on the other hand, is the opposite. He's been trying his entire life to build up his chest and he just can't seem to make it happen. I'm definitely not talking about me, by the way. Now, imagine that same gym bro is doing a push-pull leg split. And let's imagine he has it set up in the same way as I recommended in my push-pull leg series. You should go watch that if you haven't, by the way. Where he has somewhere around 2 to 3 movements for chest and shoulders and triceps. This guy, who has good shoulder development and good tricep development, but bad chest development, is doing the same amount of work for his shoulders, his triceps, and his chest. So, it may behoove the person to take out some volume from the body parts that are having great success with its current amount of volume, still growing, and instead dedicate some of that extra time to the lagging body part. The reason this works is you can only recover from so much. Sure, there is a region-specific, we'll call it, amount of recoverability for a body part, meaning each muscle group recovers separately. For instance, to take this to the extreme, let's say the same gym bro who has a lagging chest decided to stop all other lifting so that way he could hammer 40 sets a week onto his chest. This would not work because the chest is only going to recover so fast. That being said, there's also a systemic fatigue building up every time you train. You can think about this as if you have a fuel tank. There's only so much you can do before that fuel tank is empty and you have to refill it. You refill it with rest. This basically means that if you remove some volume from other body parts to add on to your lagging body part, you could theoretically recover a bit more. Now, this begs the question, how much can you lower volume for a given body part before you start to lose the gains that you made on that body part? A more succinct version of that question would be, how much work does it take to maintain muscle? Obviously, it's harder to gain it than maintain it, but by how much? This term is known as maintenance volume, or MV for short. Here's a great article by Stronger by Science. Shout out Eric Trexler. He's no longer with Stronger by Science, but that's besides the point. This is specifically about how little volume it takes to actually gain strength. So this is just to show you that you can do much less work than you think is required in order to maintain or even gain muscle and strength. So research spotlight, minimum volume meta-analysis. With squat and bench press gains with just 1 set to failure with 70 to 85% 1 rep max 2 to 3 times per week, but with caveats. Read below. It turns out volume doesn't need to be very high in order to still make strength progress. There is a recent review to determine how little volume was necessary for trained lifters to still be able to make strength gains. Turns out 1 set taken to failure or very close to failure 2 to 3 times per week with 70 to 85% 1 rep max is sufficient for intermediate level lifters. It would obviously be adequate for new lifters as well, at least for the squat and bench press. Now, that's obviously not enough to maximize hypertrophy or strength gains, but it's worth keeping in mind if maximizing efficiency matters more to you than maximizing total results, or if your schedule and training time are crunched for whatever reason. Here are the caveats themselves. They weren't elite strength athletes. Bench press around 220 pounds and squats around 330 pounds were pretty typical. 2 to 3 high quality sets per week will probably be enough to allow a more trained lifter to maintain strength, but it's probably not going to take your bench press from 400 to 500. So as you can see, it takes very little work to actually still build strength, but let's talk about maintaining muscle mass. Here's a study, exercise dosing to retain resistance training adaptations in young and older adults. Essentially, they took 70 adults and they participated in a 2-phase exercise trial that consisted of resistance training 3 days a week for 16 weeks, which was phase 1, followed by a 32-week period, phase 2, with a random assignment to detraining or one of 2 maintenance prescriptions, reducing the dose to 1/3 or 1/9 of that during phase 1. So they had people work out 3 days a week for 16 weeks, and then for 32 weeks after the fact, they either didn't get to train at all, or they had 1/3 or 1/9 the volume of the original 16-week stint. Results. Phase 1 resulted in expected gains in strength, myofiber size, and muscle mass, along with the typical LLX to LLA shift and myofiber type distribution. Both maintenance prescriptions, aka 1/3 and 1/9 total volume, preserved phase 1 muscle hypertrophy in the young, but not the old. And the old, by the way, was 60 to 75 years old. In fact, the 1/3 maintenance dose led to additional myofiber hypertrophy in the young. So we could probably assume these people were relatively untrained. In both age groups, detraining reversed the phase 1 LLX to LLA myofiber type shift, whereas a dose response was evident during maintenance training, with 1/3 dose better maintaining the shift. Strength gain during phase 1 was largely retained throughout detraining, with only a slight reduction at the final time point. So either doing 1/3 or 1/9 of your total volume for a given body part was enough to maintain, with 1/3 being a little bit better, specifically for older groups, with 1/3 even adding hypertrophy for the young group. So this study is very often cited by a lot of smart people, much smarter than me or you. Now, there isn't that many studies that actually try to go against this or that try to prove or disprove the claim. Hopefully we can get some more, but anecdotally, throughout the world of very successful and influential coaches, such as Mike Israetel, they have noticed very similar things. Essentially, your volume, which we should be specific here, is talking about hard sets per week, can be decreased by about 66%. Or you can do 1/3 of what you were doing to maintain muscle mass and potentially even grow. Obviously, these numbers are not going to be set in stone, but it just goes to show that you can massively reduce volume and just work in maintenance, doing much less work if that's something you would like to do for whatever reasons. Maybe you get a new job, maybe you start going to school, maybe you're stressed from whatever else. We know that you can go about 2 weeks without training, without any loss of strength or muscle whatsoever, and that you can do 1/3 of what it took to build muscle in order to keep muscle, if for whatever reason you're happy with your physique. So let's go back to our original gym bro. He's doing push-pull legs, 2 sessions of each day a week, 2 push sessions, 2 pull sessions, 2 leg sessions, and let's say he does 10 hard sets a week for chest, for shoulders, and for triceps. Well, maybe he decides to drop his shoulder and tricep work down to, say, anywhere from 3 to 5 hard sets per week, giving him more time and less systemic fatigue, so he can maybe go up to, say, 12 to 15 hard sets of chest movements every week. You do this for a couple of months, hopefully your chest grows in proportion to the rest of your body, and then you find a new weak point because we're fucking mentally ill and we have to fixate on something to do another specificity block on that new body part. If you don't think that this is viable or a worthwhile thing to do, this is exactly what people do in professional bodybuilding. You will hear judges mention, oh, they really need to bring up their lats this next time around. Well, using some anabolics and some specificity, they do just that, and they come back with everything else roughly the same size, maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit leaner, but with that lagging body part brought into proportion with the rest of their physique. Now, please don't say, well, yeah, they used anabolics, that's why. That does not change anything in this context. They will still have to find their maintenance volume, and they will still have to train harder for a given muscle. And guys, that is the video. If you like this style of content, please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. I respond to every single one of them. Maybe share it with one of your buddies. If you really like this style of content, you can follow all of these socials down below. They will be linked in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.